Hello, Educators First community. I apologize if you were just on with me a minute ago. I had a technical difficulty, so I just hopped back in. I'm going to wait just a couple of minutes and give people a chance to hop on, and then I will get started. All right. So I'm Robin Montegari. I have spoken a couple times before in the Educators First community, and I'm really pleased to be back tonight to talk with you about connecting with curiosity. And I'm really talking about focusing kind of on students, connecting as teachers with your students, but everything I'm saying tonight applies to all of the relationships in your life. So I want to put that out there so that when we're talking about how powerful these things are, you realize that you can use them everywhere, not just with students in school. Okay? So again, we're talking about connecting with curiosity, which to me, curiosity is the magic sauce. Okay? So again, I'm Robin Montaguerry. I am a retired school counselor of 13 plus years. As a matter of fact, this September was my first September in as many years to not go back to school. And it was bittersweet. But I retired from school counseling to pursue my other passion, which is life coaching. So I am currently a life coach primarily for women in midlife who are feeling a little stuck, a little maybe overwhelmed, or at a crossroads, and are looking for some support as they figure out their next steps, hone in on their passions, and design a life that they can step into with confidence, energy, clarity, and a lot of joy. So I really love doing that. And hey, I see Anna is on. Hi, Anna. Yeah, I just got started about a minute ago, Anna. So, okay. So also, I am incredibly passionate about all things personal development, human development, mindfulness, and growth through transitions in life. I love that. As a matter of fact, those are some of the things that I loved best about my role as a school counselor. And they're also the passions that I love most about life coaching. So today I'm going to draw on my knowledge and experience in those areas and talk to you about the importance and value of connecting with curiosity with your students. But also in your life outside of work, as I said, and the rich rewards that everyone can reap when you are living your life and approaching your days with intentional curiosity and seeking opportunities for connection. And I don't think I really even have to say that in the world we're in right now, with so many things going on, the ripple effects that come out of really good, authentic connection and allowing people to feel seen and heard and interested in cannot be overstated, right? If we can be a part of adding to that and making ripple effects through connection, we need to do it. What can be better than that? So, having worked in schools for a long time, I know firsthand how really difficult it can be to be fully present and engaged with your students. As a counselor, I typically worked with students one-on-one or in small groups. And even then, with everything else that would be going on in the day and all the other demands, it could be really hard to stay present and be focused and just be unconditionally accepting whenever they came into the office, even though that's what I do, and that was a primary part of my job. So my hat was always off to my teacher colleagues who were doing that day in and day out with a classroom of 20 plus students with personalities from every part of the spectrum. So I really had a huge admiration for the kind of energy that went into that. I mean, let's face it, right? You go to work every day, you have a curriculum to get through, you have benchmarks to meet, you sometimes have state mandated standardized testing that you have to prepare students for. You have duties, you have team meetings, you have probably another 5, 10, or 100 things that you could add to that list. And while probably most of them are super important in a school setting, not one of them, at least the ones that I mentioned, are laser focused on the person-to-person experience that you are uniquely positioned to provide to the humans with whom you interact on a daily basis. That piece is often kind of taken for granted by the powers that be. It may even be taken for granted by you. It's just kind of hanging out there in the background. I mean, you're an adult human, you got a room full of people. The assumption is you're making connections all over the place. But it's really not that easy, right? You've got a lot of other things going on, not to mention your own personal life. So, I mean, I have talked to wonderful teachers who 3 or 6 months into the school year say they are exhausted and overwhelmed. They don't know where the time has gone, and they are just trying to keep their head above water as more and more things get piled onto their plate. Do they want to make meaningful connections with students? They're awesome teachers. You bet they do. But sometimes they feel like they just don't have the time or the bandwidth or the brain energy to nurture those connections, especially with students who may be extra needy or kind of difficult to connect with or are disaffected to begin with. So just the fact that you're in the profession of teaching and you are part of the Educators First community, I'm willing to bet that you have a heart full of love for your students and the very best intentions in your profession. But the demands of life and of your work can be such that you kind of lose some of those qualities that you always felt were so important, like the quality of connecting, and more specifically, the quality of curiosity when connecting. Because you know what? Who has time for that sometimes? Who has time to be really curious about the students in front of you and their needs and the things that may be going on in their lives that you really have no idea about? Best intentions, maybe yes, but sometimes there's just no time. So you just keep going, you get in, you do your thing, you do it well, and you get out. And you keep doing that day after day after day. So before we get to the curiosity piece, which I love, again, I think is the secret sauce, I want to talk to you about the real scientifically proven benefits of connecting with students. And not just students, with anyone. I'm going to keep saying that because it is such good stuff. So I'm going to be using student, but you can replace it with anyone. So we know, this is what we know, that students who feel connected and supported are more willing to put themselves out there. Their engagement increases, and as a result of increased engagement, improved academic outcomes increase. We also know that students who have positive interactions with teachers, and you know what? Forget the over interactions, the things we can see. Students who feel connected authentically. Students who feel seen, heard, interested in, exhibit less behavior problems. These are just a couple of basic but huge when it comes to learning in a classroom, huge things that we know about the value of connection between an adult in a school building and a student. Doesn't matter the age. So that all sounds great, but what's the brain science, if any, that supports what I'm saying? So because I'm kind of like nerdy and I love when emotion and brain science combine, I'm going to share just two little tidbits that support what I'm saying to you. Here's number one. When a student or anyone has a positive interaction with you, they get a hit of dopamine. Dopamine, if you are unfamiliar, is a brain chemical that influences mood, feelings of reward, and motivation. In a nutshell, it feels good. The student is then motivated to seek more of that feeling. So they're more likely to do the task, learn the skill, meet the behavior expectations, so that they can have another positive interaction and get another hit of that good feeling dopamine. They don't know what's going on back there in the background, but that's what's happening. And so you could see how it becomes a cycle, a good cycle. So brain science number two, when you authentically connect with a student, which, for example, just talking and laughing, the hormone oxytocin is released. Oxytocin is a neurotransmitter related to empathy and bonding, and it helps to create a feeling of psychological safety. It's in this safe space that a student is more likely to take chances by raising their hand to ask questions, attempt a task even when it seems really challenging, and participate in discussions when maybe they wouldn't have before. It's in that psychological safe space that's being supported by that oxytocin. So again, this is happening in the background. We don't see it, we don't feel it, it's just happening. And it creates this great cycle that we, as educators, have the power to reinforce. And really that we, as just people in the world, have the power to reinforce with whoever we come in contact with. So it's not just that fostering connection sounds good. We say, students who feel connected do better in school. It doesn't just sound good. It really, truly is good, and the brain science supports it. So at this point, I would like to ask you what your thoughts are about what I've shared. I know there are some teachers, and there's no judgment here, but I know there are some teachers who honestly, truly feel that it's not their role to develop relationships with students. It's their role to teach material, and they're really good at it, and that's fine. But I also know so many teachers who really, really excel at creating connections. So what do you think? I know we don't have a lot of people on here live, but I want to encourage you to share in the replay. What are your thoughts about that? So I want to get back to those people who seem like they're just naturals. You know who they are. They're the people who always seem to have students around them. Students just gravitate towards them. I worked in a high school. So in my high school, Anna says it's hard because it's not really taught in our schooling. I know. That's the truth. And that's why communities that you are all in right now and continuing to learn and try new things is so fabulous. I mean, we're making connections here. So we're getting those dopamine hits and that oxytocin. That's why this type of thing is so important. So again, back to those teachers who just seem like naturals. As I said, I worked in a high school, and at my high school, students, seniors, voted on the teachers they wanted to chaperone the senior prom. So it's a pretty big deal. And I will tell you without fail, every year, mostly the same teachers would be invited back. Also in my school, every year we would do a top 20 dinner for the seniors. And they were encouraged to invite a teacher who had had an influence on them. I was at all of those, sometimes as a guest, but always as a presenter. And of the 20 teachers who would be invited, sometimes by more than one student, one teacher would be invited, I would say year in and year out, probably 15 of them would be the same most years. Each class coming through, it was the same teachers that they felt a connection to. It's like magic, it seemed like. These were the teachers who also, even the difficult students, the disaffected students, seemed to kind of mellow and be comfortable in their presence. They may not have been even trying to make those connections on purpose. It's just part of who they were. They were creating a space where students felt safe to be themselves, where they felt safe to try something new, to step out of their comfort zone. Just seemed to be natural. Some people just have that ability, even when they're overwhelmed and overworked. But what I want to offer you today is some encouragement that we all have the ability to connect with students in a powerful way that doesn't necessarily have to be so hard or take up any more of your really, really valuable and limited brain energy. It's about approaching your life and your work with curiosity, with wonder, and with a questioning and interested mind. And that is a skill that you can develop. It really, really, truly is. And I'm going to give you a few kind of exercises that you can do to work on developing that skill. So you've probably heard the statement, "You know my name, not my story." Have you heard that? When I started counseling and throughout, I had like several mantras that I would repeat to myself when I was having a tough time or when I needed to remind myself of some of my core values. And that was one of them. You know my name, not my story. I lived by it. I would remind myself daily when I was dealing with students, with coworkers, with irate parents, that I only knew the person standing in front of me at this moment in time. I only knew the person standing in front of me at this moment. I had no idea what they brought with them into the day. I had no idea what they brought with them into the school building or into my office. I didn't know what happened to them in the 5 minutes before they got there, in the last 24 hours, or in the last 5 years, even if they were coworkers and I knew them. Really, I only knew the surface. I knew their name, not their story. And I learned to take myself out of the equation, not take their mood, their words, not take any of it personally because it wasn't about me. And it kind of would be self-centered of me to think it was. And I would just remind myself, this is not about me, and I know your name, not your story. And I would get curious. That magical word, curious. Not in a nosy, busybody way, but in a compassionate, non-judgmental way that allowed them to feel seen, heard, interested in, and respected. And really, when it comes down to it, isn't that what we really all want? Don't you feel so good when you are in a dialogue with somebody and you're feeling really seen and heard? And so that's how I would begin to establish connection with people I worked with people in my life. It carried into everything. And I'll be honest, it did not come naturally to me in the beginning. I had to practice being non-judgmental, being curious, being compassionate, all of those things. I had to practice with intention. And I had to do a lot of introspection and be curious about myself as well. And I would, at the end of the day, think back, how did I do today? What could I have done better? What scared me? What do I need to work on? How do I continue to take myself out of the equation when it's so hard not to take things personally? It really is, because a lot of times it feels directed right at you. But I maintained that curiosity always. And that's something I was trained to do. That was part of my education as a counselor. So if you have not had that kind of intense work, it can seem really daunting and really intimidating. But I'm promising you that curiosity is a skill that can be developed, and it is a skill that can be used to create powerful, authentic connections with others. When you're curious, making those connections will just feel easier because you will get a response that's different than when you're trying too hard. So my suggestion to you all is that you add the practice of curiosity into your daily life. And I'm going to give you 5 suggested practices right now, and then I will include an attachment in the comments that will have the suggestions written out for you. And hopefully you will try 1 or all 5 of these. And the more you practice them, the more they just become a part of who you are. And I really think that you will feel the benefit, that if you practice curiosity with people you love in your family, you will see great responses. If you practice curiosity with your students, with your peers, with administrators, you will feel the benefit of that. And you will feel how that can really supercharge your ability to make connections. So, number 1 thing to do to practice curiosity. Get to know who you are as a curious person. So consider what you're already naturally curious about and how that shows up for you. So, for example, I'm curious about skydiving, which I don't know why I'm saying that because I'm actually not super curious about skydiving. But let's say I'm curious about skydiving. What's my style around that? What do I do to learn more about skydiving? Who do I talk to? How do I engage? Do I want to do it or do I want to read about it? Like, how am I curious about skydiving? And just kind of notice what comes up for you. Who are you as a curious person? That's thing number 1. And I mean, think about that often. When you notice you're being curious about something that naturally interests you, notice also what that elicits in you, how you respond in a curious way. That awareness is going to really carry you even further, okay? So, number 2, set reminders on your phone throughout your day to intentionally practice. Sound silly? Sound a little strange? It's such a good practice because you will forget to practice being curious. You will just forget. You're too busy. You need a reminder. So set reminders on your phone. It's very easy to do. It's a quiet practice, so you can do it throughout your school day. Set those reminders. And when you get a reminder, ask yourself, am I approaching my day with curiosity? What have I been curious about so far today? What can I be curious about in this moment? What can I do at some point in the rest of my day to be intentionally curious? Who can I interact with in a curious way? Anna says she loves the idea of setting a reminder. I'm telling you, the reminders are one of my favorite things in terms of practicing any kind of self-awareness, because before it becomes a part of who we are, we need to practice it because we just get too swept up and too busy. So I love this tip number 2. And then number 3, look for opportunities in your day to deliberately be curious. So look at your schedule of the day. Maybe you have a faculty meeting and decide, you know what, I'm going to focus on being curious during this faculty meeting. So when you're in that faculty meeting, maybe ask a couple questions. Look around the room. Be curious about the people who are there. What's the vibe of the room? Do they seem light? Do they seem heavy? Do they seem angry? Why? Just get curious. Notice how it feels. Notice what comes up for you. Maybe spark a conversation with someone that gives you a chance to practice the curiosity. That's number 3. Number 4, make it a point to ask questions of others during your day and not just about what you're teaching or working on in the moment. So a really specific example here that could maybe spark some connection with a student through adding some curiosity. So say you're working with a student one-on-one and they're struggling with something and you're helping them with it, and it's time to wrap up your conversation. So maybe instead of just ending it, you say to the student, you know what, before we finish, I'm a science teacher. So you know I like science. I went to school for it. I'm into it. What's something that interests you? What's something that you like out of school? And see what kind of response you get. Be creative. Ask some questions. The worst case scenario, you're going to get a blank stare or a shrug. But you might find a connection there. You might not even know it. That student might walk away thinking, wow, that was really cool. Like, that felt good. It wasn't just about that stuff I'm struggling with. She or he asked me, what interests me outside of school? You never know. You never know what kind of connection or impact you might have in that moment just by being curious. You know, that might be just the hit of dopamine or oxytocin that kid needs in that moment. I'd encourage you to try that with family and friends too. And then number 5, at the end of your day, commit to spending some time noticing how curiosity showed up for you in the day. Were there times that you could have been more curious? When you were, did it feel good or did it feel uncomfortable for you? And if it was uncomfortable, what might you be able to do to shift that or to lean into it a little more? If it was uncomfortable, did it feel like you couldn't take yourself out of the equation? Were you making it too personal? And super important to our conversation today, if you practiced curiosity with students, did you feel like it did anything? Did you make a connection? Did it open the door to some kind of connection? And I want to remind you that you don't always see an impact right away. You don't always see an impact right away. But know that you are creating something. You are creating a connection. You're creating a response and an emotion. And that's huge. Because you don't know what else is happening in that student's life. All you know is what you can do in the moment. That's easy, and that can improve things and create things and lead to some successes. So remember, our conversation today is about how valuable creating authentic connections is to not only our students, but to anybody that we deal with. We talked about the brain science that supports it, because there is brain science that supports it. And we talked about how while some people seem to be naturals at the art of creating connections, any of us, if we want to, can develop the skill. And one of the keys to developing that skill is to strengthen your sense of curiosity and use that to guide those authentic connections with your students, your partner, your kids, your parents, your friends, with anybody, your boss. Goes on and on and on. So that's really it for me today on connections and curiosity and how the two work together to do magical things. I'd really love to know what your thoughts are. So please leave comments. Let me know what you think. If you agree, if you disagree, doesn't matter, because you know why? I'm curious. All right, everyone. So until we speak again, I wish you a good school year. Take care.